You completed an Ironman, undoubtedly a great success, but why did crossing that finish line not feel as rewarding as maybe you expected?
Taken some time for me to process that feeling for sure. And I think it comes down to my nature as quite a logical and pragmatic person. I put the hours in, I did the training, I followed the racing strategy. So there was no surprise that I executed that race exactly how I should have.
Mm-hmm.
So crossing that finish line then wasn't this emotional, I can't believe I did it, like you often see online and when other people cross those finish lines. It was of course, that was going to be the outcome. I I did everything that I should have done and I followed the strategy. So I guess I just didn't get that elation and feeling of, oh my God, I can't believe I did it, because I could believe I did it because I did all of the right
Mm.
things.
But why? Because that all makes sense, right? And that's fair. And obviously, I was there and I saw that and I could get that. But equally, I feel like whilst that's all fair and reasonable and makes sense, flip side of that is on the day, adrenaline, like emotion, that environment. Why do you think that still didn't weigh more heavily?
Part of it, I think, is just me and my nature.
Mm.
So my entire racing life, I have never had that emotional finish line. You'll remember back to when I raced Manchester Marathon and you came and found me, and I was sat there with a cup of tea in my flask that I'd made earlier and some Jaffa cakes, and I was just like, "Hey guys, like, should we go back to the Airbnb?"
Yeah.
And I guess that is just part of my nature, that I just don't have that emotional
Hmm.
feeling on race day. And then I guess the other half of that, maybe it's part of Ironman racing specifically and the endurance races that I typically run, is there's a lot of time to like process what you're thinking whilst you're there. Whereas if you think like a 5K race or
Yeah.
something even shorter, you talk about sprint racing, it's like over so fast,
Hmm.
and then you get that result and you're like, oh my God, because you've had no time to process it.
Hmm.
Whereas I suppose with long distance and endurance racing, like you're in your own head for the whole time.
Mm.
So by the time you get to that finish line, at least for me, it's like I I've worked out
Mm.
what time I'm going to finish, how I'm probably going to be feeling, how my nutrition's playing out across the race. So like nothing really is a surprise by the time you get to that finish line.
Do you think that's good or bad? Because I guess one of the things I've always loved about football, and I think probably a lot of people relate to this, maybe other people won't, but when I'm playing a game of football for that 90 minutes, I don't think about anything else. And that's not necessarily because I'm thinking about the game. Like, obviously, you are, but I was almost caught up in it. And that sounds a bit sort of wishy washy, but like you're just doing. There isn't really much thinking about. And you might have sort of tactics or things you're trying to implement, but it's just go. Whereas this is quite opposite to that, if you like. Do you think that's good or bad? Like, do you like that? Do you enjoy that side of it?
Really hard to say, and I don't know if the way that I deal with endurance racing is representative of every endurance athlete out
Mm.
there. You could talk probably to 1,000 athletes and they'd give you a different
Oh yeah.
variation of what I'm about to say. So all I can say is based on the way that I race and my journey and the way that I've developed as an endurance athlete, I guess you could
Mm.
say. And for me, I think I have a really good balance of finding flow in races. So we'll probably talk about it, but actually in the race, I had the most incredible flow state as part of my bike
Mm.
leg. It was just, I couldn't even describe it to you. It was incredible, mixed with a really good balance of I'm on top of my strategy, my nutrition, and I have a really strong sense of control. I don't feel like I'm going to spiral into something horrible, which can
Mm-hmm.
often happen in those sorts of events. So, is it good or bad? It's kind of impossible to say, to be honest.
There we go. Okay, okay. Well, before you crack on, need to again mention my FitPod, who I did a very scripted thank you last time, which I'll try and do a bit more free flowing. But they very kindly let they use their space again. And ultimately, their concept is simply if you want a private, dedicated space away from a normal gym, but has everything that a normal gym would offer, you can book round the clock, 24 hours, and come and use it for an hour or longer if you want to book for more, and build up your confidence in a enclosed private setting. PTs as well, so you need a dedicated area to be able to train your clients at, then that works for this too. And ultimately, all you need to do is go and download that app, MyFitPod, choose a location. Basingstoke is this one, and you can book an hour session at any time you see fit. So yeah. But anyway, back to you. Some people will know who you are because in the first season we obviously did our own stories and told everyone what we're about, what we're doing. But now you're here as a guest. So who are you? What do you do? And what do people need to know about you to know how you approach your training?
So outside of my sporting life, I am a global brand and communications manager. I have spent my career to date in marketing brand for a mix of global brands and smaller sort of scale up brands. Inside my sporting life, I started my kind of earliest experiences mostly in running after having a back injury that really made me change my sort of perspective on movement and life probably generally.
Mm-hmm.
And then moved into triathlon at the beginning of last year. So I suppose coming up 2 years in the triathlon world, but still very heavily and always have been in that endurance space as opposed to anything sort of fast.
Yeah. So what made you move to triathlon?
The move to triathlon happened. I was in the build up to Manchester Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
I had done a marathon in December. Manchester Marathon is April among that kind of core spring racing season. And my body had taken such a toll on back-to-back training blocks from half marathons to marathons. And I was like, I am just no longer enjoying and finding it really hard to balance the training, the back and forth with injury life. And I was like, I need to find some variety that means I can still enjoy doing all the endurance training that I love, but my body's not taking such a battering. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen, I think probably online, I'd seen triathlon coming more into the mainstream and thought, well, I used to swim as a kid. I've got running under my belt. Cycling, I had no experience, literally no experience. Yeah. But otherwise, I kind of felt like it was achievable. So I started having a look at the races to kind of benchmark, like based on how long, and I'm talking about just duration and time, a marathon might take. How does that stack up against some of the triathlon events? And then I saw Olympic distance triathlon for like most people, it's kind of 3-4 hours, something like that. And I thought, well, you know, that's fairly similar to a marathon. So that could tick a lot of my boxes. Mm-hmm. But in terms of training, it gave me the diversity and the cross training to, one, make it just a little bit more interesting for me again. I put so much into running, doing the same things, and also try and take a bit of the high impact load off of running, but still be able to maintain the same volume. So that's when I booked that first triathlon, which was Brighton Tri.
Okay. But there was Brighton Tri, but after that you quickly decided to commit to a full Ironman, which is quite a big step after suddenly deciding, right, I'm going to give triathlon a go. Why go to such an extreme? Most people would probably, I don't know, power through some Olympic distance or even just go to a 70.3 Ironman, all of which in their own right are hefty undertakings and should not be underestimated. But you went all out. Why do you think that was?
So I did better than expected in Brighton Tri. Mm-hmm. So in that race, I had no expectations going into it, and then came out with that third place age group and was like, oh my God, like I used to be a runner, and in the running world, you're like one in tens of thousands of people per race. And then all of a sudden I did this and I enjoyed it so much. It was the most fun and free I've ever felt in a race. I had no expectation and I just had the best time racing.
I just want to interrupt you. Do you think that lack of expectation is what maybe led to such an enjoyed experience?
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact that you have, it's the same saying goes, like when you're doing something new or a new distance, like everything you do is a PB, everything you do is your best. So you go back to having that like beginner's gains almost, but for racing, because everything you do is going to be the best that you've ever done it. So yeah, I think that's a massive part of it. But I came out of that race having really enjoyed it. I was really loving my training at the time. I was working with a coach that I at the time felt really quite good about. I was having a really good balance just in terms of life, training. I had no injuries. I'd been without an injury then for probably 9 months, which is the longest stretch that I'd had in quite some time, to be honest. When I'm talking about injuries there, I'm just talking about small, like running niggles, a bit of runner's knee, shin splint, like nothing major. I'm just talking about general running niggles. And I'd been without anything for a good 9 months. And I was like, this feels good. And then I'd reflected on today, all of the running races that I'd done were always within reach. So I'd never signed up to a race and thought, I don't know if I can get across that finish line. Everything I did was a really natural progression. I just increased my distance naturally with running, and then I'd got to half marathon, then I ran 20 miles, and then I booked a marathon, and then I did another marathon. So over that time, I was always doing things I know that I could do. And I had this really deep desire to try and do something that pushed me beyond anything that I'd done before, and sign up to something that felt like a massive challenge that was going to test my commitment, my dedication, my focus. And that was the only thing was Ironman, because if I'd gone from Olympic distance to 70.3, I knew that I could do that. By the time I crossed that finish line, I was like, I'm not saying it won't be hard, but I know that I can definitely do it. When I signed up to Ironman, I was like, that cycle is 180k. Like, I've never even got close to that. The most that I cycled was the 40k that I did in my Olympic distance triathlon. So for me, that was probably just as much of a mental, I really want to prove that I can do something, prove to myself that I can do it, as much as it was, I want to push myself physically to the absolute max. And I think it's probably fair to say that Ironman is that max or close to in terms of endurance for a lot of people.
Okay, so given the very logical approach, that was obviously good in the sense it got you to the point where you're like, right, okay, now I need to really, really push. But also, we said right at the start that almost was a hindrance and took away maybe from the emotions of the day and like recognizing maybe the achievement for what it was and how it felt. So where do you think it sort of, because that would have been a very useful approach to take and probably help you stay very disciplined in the process. But was there a point where that kind of got overweighed by the fact that like, I'm just going to do this, so does it actually matter almost?
So it's probably worth saying that like the driving force for me doing it was to do something that I felt really proud of and to do something that I didn't think I could do. And I'd say probably 4 or 5 weeks before the race itself, I got to this point where it's probably fair to say I was enjoying it less. It had taken its toll on my time, my balance with the rest of the world. And I got to a point where I was like I'm at capacity now with I can't keep doing this. I couldn't sustain that level of training. But it was at that point that I also sat there and went, if the race was cancelled, I have achieved what I wanted to achieve because I did the hard thing. The hard thing is the training. The hard thing is the like 8-hour training days on a Sunday and balancing everything around like a normal full-time 9 to 5 relationship, having some sort of social life and everything else. So I'd done the hard part, and I really felt at that moment in time that I'd ticked the box that I needed to tick. The race, and like people will often say the hard part is the training and the race is just the reward where you get to put it all into practice, you're fueled by the crowd and it's all there to just feel really good. So it's not to say that I would have chose to not do the race, but 4 or 5 weeks before I'd got to the point where I was like, do you know what, I'm I'm super proud of where I've got to.
Yeah.
And I suppose that feeds into then how I felt on race day, because there was no reason that race shouldn't have gone the way that it did. The thing about triathlon, which a lot of triathletes, if they come from another sport, will say, is there's so much, particularly running, there's so much about triathlon that is outside of your control. There are so many natural variables that you just can't control. You've got how, if it's a sea swim, like how choppy the waves are, what the tide is. From a bike point of view, there's loads of mechanicals that are just unlucky. If you hit a hole the wrong way, you have chips on the road. If you like blow an inner tube, whatever it is, there's so many things that you just can't control, versus something like a marathon where, yes, there's loads of things that can go wrong, but actually most of that is inside of your control. The big things that typically go wrong when you're running is like your fueling went wrong, you were dehydrated, you overheat, whatever. Most of that's inside your control, whereas with triathlon it's not. So what I was worried about from a race day point of view was all of those uncontrollables. What's the water going to be like? Am I going to get kicked in the face? It's really common. Am I, if something went wrong with my bike, if I had a mechanical on the bike, that would have really, really screwed me. All of that didn't happen, and I had all of the best mechanical and situation luck that I could have. So yeah, it's no surprise that it went how it went.
Okay. But you see, I want to dig into this more, because I don't get that, right? That like race day wouldn't be, I don't know, but like the thing, not that you weren't excited, but the thing that brings the excitement, like that's the pinnacle, right? You would almost, like, this is obviously probably quite a good bit of looking, because this is obviously someone that's not in the sport and sort of sees it from an external viewpoint. And I get the training's the hard point, and that should be the approach for any sport. You train as hard, if not more, than you play or perform on race day, so that's ultimately easier and you have to think about it less. But people, runners, triathlons, they always like their medals up on the wall somewhere or something. A lot of them do, and it's always a thing like getting a medal, that moment at the end. But I can get that. I can see, looking at that, being like, well, okay, I can get why, when you're putting all that time in and you have like those big days, why that would be so important. But you're almost saying that no, that was almost low on the scale, shall we say, compared to actually just doing the training.
So I think there's probably loads of things that come into this, but one of the really big things I think is about how, and generally you see this across society and culturally, is how these things contribute to our sense of identity and who we are. And I think from a race point of view, there's something, and Ironman have, like, you could argue nailed this, you could argue that it's a terrible thing, but there is this such strong hold of identity of what it is to be an Ironman. And this idea that even their brand name, people will go around and say, I am an Ironman. I never did it for that reason. I did it because the tattoo, exactly. People have it everywhere. That's the reason they're, queues out the door for their merch tents, because people just love it, and it's all like horrendously overpriced, because people have such a strong sense of identity, pride, whatever it is, with being an Ironman. So I guess that's part of it, and it wasn't part of the reason that I wanted to do an Ironman. I wanted to do an Ironman for the pride, sense of achievement for doing that long thing.
The challenge for yourself, rather than
and you could argue that maybe there was a part of it that was Ironman led. I didn't choose to do a full distance triathlon that was a non-Ironman branded event in the UK. So, like, read into it what you will. Maybe there was a part of it that was like, I wanted to do an Ironman rather than an Ironman distance event. So I think that's definitely part of why people have that sense of achievement on race day. But another part of it is just, I suppose, it's my personal way of working, that because I had all of the logic and knowledge that I'd put all the work in, it was obvious, unless something outside of my control went wrong, that was going to be the outcome of the day. I know loads of athletes who will get to the finish line, they'll be bawling their eyes out, and they'll be like overjoyed with pride and happiness, and they'll celebrate it. And I'm not in any way saying that is the wrong thing. It just isn't how I worked. And it took me a really long time to get to a point where I stopped crossing finish lines and going, I think I'm broken, because everyone's crying, and I'm just like, great, like, it happened like I thought it was going to. So it's taken me a long time to realize that actually some of this is just part of my nature. It's about how you process it in your mind, I suppose, like all the way up to the race. And I also think it depends what your goal is of that race. So because I'd never raced Ironman distance before, I'd really tried to block out any idea or expectation of what the finish time were going to be, what the splits were going to be. I just needed to finish, wanted to finish doing the best that I could. And I remember talking before I started working with the coach that I did for Ironman, talking about, I want to finish that race knowing that I did everything that I could and I did it the best that I could, but it wasn't about getting a time. I guess the difference is if, and I've talked about like what my races will look like going forward, if I get to the next start line and actually that is about smashing a PB, we're going for a number, there probably would be a different sense or feeling that came at the end of that race if I had or hadn't achieved that goal. I think that there's loads of things that I think influence how someone might feel on that race day.
Do you think, given the approach you clearly take, do you think you get nervous, or do you get nervous on race day? Did you pre-Ironman?
I think I was quite relaxed on race day. I think it's the more relaxed you can be on race day, the better. And I've talked a lot about the like unfair competitive advantage of the people who are confident in the water with triathlon. So this idea that actually, if you're confident in the water, even if you're not the fastest swimmer, you will have a significant advantage. This isn't backed by any data. This is like my perception from talking to other triathletes and my experience in triathlon, that you will likely do better because you go into it in a quite positive headspace. You start the race with something that you feel quite strong in. You look around at the start of an Ironman, you were there, you probably would have seen, there are so many people afraid of the swim. They will be stood there crying, stressed, like really quite a traumatic start to a race because they're not confident in the water. And I think even if your other two disciplines are stronger, just that feeling of getting to the start of a race, knowing you've got to do something that you really find uncomfortable, I think is probably quite hard.
Yeah.
So in terms of race day morning, are there nerves? Yeah, of course, always. But just because of my nature, I've done all the things. I've racked my bike. All my nutrition's there. The only things that can go wrong, and I take a lot of security in getting to that start line, knowing the only things that can go wrong are the things that are outside of my control. Everything that I've done is to the plan. I've done all the hard work. Everything is prepared as it should be. That's like as much as you can do with any race.
Was there any point in the race then that you thought, this is fine, I'm going to get this done? Or was it contrary at any point where you went, damn, can I do this?
I said the whole way along that as long as I can get off the bike, I know that I can do it. I've run marathons before, so as long as I can get off the bike was the hardest bit. I'd only ridden that distance once in training. So I thought, as long as I can get off the bike, I'll be okay. And actually, the bike course, it's like a lollipop-shaped loop, right? So you go up and then round in a circle, and then you do that circle again before you come back down. Once I'd done the first bit, I was feeling so good. First loop, and I was like, I feel good. I'd been in that flow state. I felt incredible. And I was like, unless my bike breaks, I'm fine. I'm going to do this. In terms of feeling like I'm not going to do it, there actually wasn't on race day a part of me that thought I might not. As soon as I got to the run, I knew I'd be okay. By that point, it's like even if I had to walk around, I knew that I would do it. So yeah, and the early stage of the bike, if you let that sort of thought creep in that early, I think you'd be screwed.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Okay, so given all that, and even though maybe crossing the finish line at the time, you didn't get that sense of elation or maybe success or recognizing it now, do you look back on it and go, that was big, that was good, I'm glad I did that? Or do you still not quite sort of see that?
I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. I recognise that, and I'm incredibly proud of the commitment, the training that was super hard that I did anyway, like particularly with the bike. It was so outside my comfort zone, so many like cold mornings, and I'll expose myself and be totally vulnerable here. Like the mornings I would sit at the back door crying because I didn't want to go out. You were there saying, come on darling, like it's okay, you can do it. And that I feel incredibly proud of. And I think it taught me a lot about myself, what it means to do hard things. When I then think about the actual race and from a fitness point of view, I feel more proud at the mental and discipline achievement of doing an Ironman than the physical side. And actually, I don't want to like call out or make any other Ironman in the world feel bad, but if you commit to the time, Ironman training is not that hard. It's just time.
Oh, okay. That's a big statement.
Yeah.
Interesting, but a big statement. Elaborate.
Getting faster at Ironman, hard. Doing an Ironman, getting across the finish line, I don't think is that hard.
Why?
Because if you're brand new to training, right, and you're like couch to 5K thinking I want to do an Ironman, it's going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. But if you've got an endurance base, I was running marathons before, I was totally comfortable with doing the long sessions. It's just more of the same. It's more of low intensity, high volume, just tick over and get the miles done. And there's so much, if you enjoy it, there's so much of that that's fun. So for me, in the way that I train, I don't think it's that hard. The hard part is planning, is the scheduling, paying for it, and all of the other things that come with it. But I don't think the actual training, it's unusual that you'd get to, if you fuel correctly, unusual that you get to a session, you think, God, this is hard. Because you're just pretty much never working at that like absolute max that you would be if you were trying to get faster. So if you're doing your first Ironman like I was, you get to a point where you kind of stop focusing on trying to be faster. You're just getting the volume in to be able to get over the finish line. If I were to do another one, it would probably be different. I'd be more focused on trying to get fast simultaneously, but it's hard. Like most people lose speed when they do an Ironman because the focus has to change.
No, it's interesting actually, because I was just remembering, I listened to a podcast ages ago now, a Rich Roll one, and he had an Australian Ironman professional who was racing at whatever the top level is at the moment, I don't know. But he was speaking about the bike and how it was almost like obviously not literally, but he was saying it's like a recovery period. Saying like you almost rip the swim. In the bike you can chill out, inverted commas, because in reality you're never actually going to really even get out of zone 3 because, and obviously for the pros it's relative, right? They're still probably ripping some stupid number of watts. I think like the average speed is over 40 kilometers per hour. It's nuts. But they always sort of chill out and just got to hold a pace and stay competitive, and then the run again, you're ripping it again. It's almost full
But
steady.
even that is relative, right? Because you're not talking about doing your fastest 5K straight off the bike. It's still a marathon. You still have to pace it so that you're not shooting off the bike and jumping into zone 5, because you will bonk and you'll be screwed. One of the probably darkest parts of my Ironman is like looking around you and like everyone's throwing up, everyone feels like shit. There's like people sat on the sides of the roads everywhere. It's like some sort of apocalypse. It's awful.
It's not motivating, I say that. It's
definitely not.
When am I going to do that?
Just waiting for it to come.
Okay, so how about the event itself, Copenhagen? I mean, I personally obviously getting to see a bit of it, even though not loads, loved it. But the event itself and the city, you you'd see a reasonable amount of on race day. What thoughts, feels? Was it good?
Yeah, look, as a first Ironman, I spent quite a lot of time researching where I wanted to do it, and there's a reason that we flew all the way to Copenhagen with the stress of traveling with a bike to not do my first Ironman in the UK, because the UK Ironmans are tough. Maybe I'll do one day, but for my first Ironman, it was just too much to bite off at that point. So in terms of the actual race, the the reason I chose it was because the swim was protected, the bike was fairly flat, and the run was fairly flat, and that's kind of everything that you want from a first Ironman. The swim was perfect. I literally couldn't have asked for anything better in terms of the swim. The bike, obviously, the courses are long, so it's just never going to be like running the London Marathon where every single street is lined with supporters. You're out there for a long time and it's lonely, but incredibly beautiful. The hard part with both the bike and the run for me is the laps, and you'll often see this because just the support required and the logistics of having a single loop course is so much greater when you have to do it once rather than people can go around the same support areas twice. So that was probably the hardest bit. The run was really disorientating. It's probably the one part of the whole Ironman that I really struggled with, and from just like a course and a layout point of view would be the thing that if Ironman Copenhagen said what would you change, it would be that. I found it is kind of hard to explain, but you kind of come into the course with the extra 2K, if you like. Think about the marathon courses, let's call it 42K. You kind of come in with a 2K extra on your first lap, but what it means is you have a really disorientated sense of where that lap starts. It meant that by like the second and third lap, you kind of don't know where you're ticking over. Like, are you ticking over at 10K, which when you start is what you're thinking, but actually it's at every 12K. I should have probably got a sense of that quicker than I did, but at that point with that level of fatigue, like
your brain's not going to
the logic just goes out the window. But yeah, overall, like I don't think ask for a better first Ironman course, and if there's anyone that asked what first Ironman, I'd 100% recommend Copenhagen. You just got to be ready for the stress of traveling with a bike box and some of the.
It went all right though, didn't they? Obviously did have to be very, very careful, but there was no real issues.
Yeah, I mean, it was more just like the emotional stress for me trying to track with my AirTag where my bike was at any given moment. But
top floor apartment with a bike box probably wasn't the best.
Yeah. That's really good learning.
It was like
with no lift.
Advice we should put out there. If you're traveling, don't go to a top floor apartment with no lift. Okay. So then in terms of like the actual training itself, what was enjoyment like for you in that process? Because obviously you said about crying before you go out on these bikes and that being a really hard part. And obviously I think that's understandable given you weren't cycling at all. And that was obviously going to be always a new big challenge. But did you enjoy the training? You said about you got to sort of, was it 5 weeks before where you're like, I'm done now almost. But what part of it did you enjoy and what part didn't you?
The training itself, I thoroughly enjoyed. I have an endurance preference through and through. I'm finding that now as I'm trying to put some speed back in, and I'm like, yeah, I just want to run zone 2. I'd rather run like 30K in zone 2 than just do like a 30-minute fast session. So I did enjoy the training. I think it played to my strength. I'm mentally, I think I can say fairly strong. So like this idea of like, you've got to spend 4 hours on the turbo because it's raining and on a Sunday, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like I just get on and I'll do it. I don't have that struggle with just getting it done. From that point of view, I really, really enjoyed it. I suppose the parts that were harder were the bits that were really pushing me outside of my comfort zone, and that was being outdoors on the bike. The idea, and there were just so many unknowns that I'd never faced before. So being potentially 70, 80 kilometers away from home and then having a puncture, I'd never ridden a road bike. So it took me a really long time to even take out the things that I'd need to fix a puncture, despite the fact that if I'd had a puncture, I would have had no idea what to do with it. But then this idea, particularly like in the colder months, of saying, right, well, I can do it, but if anything happens, I'm 80 kilometers away. That's quite a long time in terms of a car journey for someone to come and save me, for them to come. And then like, what happens if I get too cold? And like, I'll be sat on the side of the road. And there were just so many things that I was worried about. not to mention the horrendous abuse on the UK roads to cyclists, which made it a constant battle and just less enjoyable. So really that was the part that I didn't enjoy, but everything else, and like when I could go out on my long runs at the weekend, that was like my peace and haven out of all of it, because I know that I could just put my shoes on and go out and run, and I know that I can do that. Like I didn't need to worry about it. I wasn't trying to experiment with fueling because I knew what that would look like. Whereas like again, a lot of the bike was like constantly thinking, let's try different fuel, let's see what works on race day, and then managing, I need to make sure I fuel right for this ride. How does that translate into a race day situation?
Yeah.
And then how do I make sure that I can evolve and make sure that it's right going forward.
Okay, so given that, you said a lot of it was more mental battle rather than the physical side, given that probably the physical element you actually enjoyed.
It's definitely more mental. I think the only thing that is fair to say about the bike is fueling. It just took me a while, and like bonking on the bike is an absolutely real thing. And you go out on a big bike ride and you haven't got enough fuel, you will feel like you've died. And that is so real. So that took me a little while to get to a point where I was like, I need to eat. I literally don't stop eating.
I was going to say, what for you there? Be specific. What did you find that hit the box for you? Obviously, it'll be different for everyone, but
yeah. So with my coach, we talked a lot about this idea of a bike buffet. You'll hear this in triathlon and probably cycling. So you literally don't stop eating whilst you're on the bike. You do not stop eating. And also this idea that if you've got to a point where you're hungry, it's too late.
Yeah.
So by race day, and my race day fuel was Precision Fuel Chews, and I ate.
Not an advert, by the way.
I ate so many while I was on the bike, so many, with a side of a few salty peanuts. Joe, I couldn't tell you. Probably 40 packs or something like that. It was a lot.
How many's in a pack?
Like two, so you get 2 square chews, 30 grams per 2. So I should have added up how much I actually ate. But I was eating a pack every 20 minutes for however long my bike leg was for Ironman, with a side of salty peanuts.
Hang on, so that's just so I'd love to like try and work this out a little bit. So a pack every 20 minutes, that's 60 grams every 20 minutes of carbs.
No, 30 grams every 20 minutes.
30 grams, okay. So that's 90 grams in an hour already. Plus, go on, then
salty peanuts, just to like switch up the palate so you don't get that sugary flavour fatigue. Had carbs in my water, so at each aid station I'd take 1 bottle of water and then 1 bottle of carbs with water. And then a couple of naked bars. So I tried to have 1 naked bar, and then depending on which one you get, like let's call it 25 grams of carbs.
So could you estimate maybe how many grams of carbs you're consuming in an hour?
My maths isn't that good.
Okay.
But you're aiming for like 100 grams of carbs an hour.
I would have thought you'd easily be hitting that, though.
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yes.
You know what the pros try and get these days? I did listen to something a while ago.
It's mega. But it's hard. Like a massive part of training is also teaching your body to be able to do that. I was talking to another runner about it recently. Like if you went out and tried to consume the amount of artificial carbs that I can consume during that training block, you'd probably feel horrendous.
Yeah.
In the same way that like when I was doing a lot more running in the trails, I would go out with like jam sandwiches and like fruit, and I'd eat that while I was running. Like I'd eat solid food while I was running. If you just gave that, like if you did that, it might sit terribly.
I can't eat anything. Like people eat Haribos at half time. It's a really popular snack for football, and I can't touch anything. I sometimes have like 2 bites of a banana.
So it's just as much about training your body for that fuel as it is. But in terms of like leading up to it, my training, I tried not to have loads of artificial. One, because like generally in life, we are very anti ultra processed food. So this idea of just piling my body with artificial carbs just didn't feel good. They're also incredibly expensive. Like you talk to any triathlete and that sort of nutrition.
The final shot for you, didn't I? I remember that actually. That's scary. It was like 50 quid or something. I can't believe it.
So then you start adding that to like every single week of training, like it gets funny. So in training, I was doing a lot of like naked bars and raw fruit, that sort of stuff. Anything that I could try and take as compact as possible, and then supplemented a bit of artificial sort of sports nutrition. And then particularly as it got close to race day, it was just trying to replicate as best I could. So it was pretty much all sports nutrition, just trying to figure out what worked, what quantities, where it started to feel like too much.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, isn't it? I don't think you really get anything like that. Running sort of touches on it a bit, obviously, but there's not many other sports that you have to sort of think about your fueling to that. That amount of
it's make or break. It's absolutely make or break.
Interesting, isn't it? We kind of touched on it there, but like the cost thing is just something I wanted to speak to you about, because I think it's interesting, and I think it's one, understandable, but also not great, because the way I view it is it makes it quite inaccessible as a sport, and it is pitched as just what you got to do. But what's your view on kind of the financial investment required to properly take on an Ironman?
So it's definitely worth separating Ironman and triathlon. So triathlon as a sport is expensive. I don't think anyone will question that. The level of that expense does change. So Ironman are, just from like an entry price ticket point of view, are more expensive than the equivalent non-Ironman branded event.
Yep.
So that's part of what we were talking about in terms of identity. It's like people choose to do an Ironman because it's an Ironman rather than just doing a 140.6 race.
Yeah.
So the entry to an Ironman is expensive. Everything that comes with it has varying levels of investment. The part that I find really hard is, I think more than most other sports, there's a like really direct and quite significant correlation between the amount you spend and how well you perform. And that I find really hard. With running, yes, you can buy carbon plated shoes. So you're talking about like a 250 or 300 pound pair of shoes. I think I haven't bought carbon trainers in ages, versus, your entry level 50 quid or 100 pound pair of shoes. But we know, and like there was a video that went round a while ago, that like the difference in performance from like the last 100 years of 100-meter sprinting is like tiny, despite all of the technology that's come forward. So most of your advantage in running is going to be actually down to hard work, training, and how you run, versus just the pair of shoes that you wear. With triathlon, you can change something on your bike, upgrade something, or swap your bike, or have a faster wetsuit, or anything like that, fast tri-suit, whatever, and you start getting like full percentage gains. So you're no longer talking about like a marginal gain. You're talking about like you could easily stack up, particularly as a beginner, pretty hefty advantage from just spending more. When I went for a bike fit, so I got my bike fitted to me, and I was on a road bike with aero bars. If I'd gone into a TT bike, which I didn't, because again, you'd be talking about another few £1,000s for a TT bike, I could have saved, just by changing my bike, so no difference in the terms of the way I was riding, 45 minutes to an hour. That is mega. And that's just from swapping from a road bike to a TT bike. The thing is with that is you have to have both. So then that is like a pretty big financial investment. Same with you change to carbon wheels, you start changing your components to carbon. You have like a different helmet that starts saving you time. You get an even tighter tri-suit that's really focused on giving you those aero gains. Suddenly you're like, you're stacking up big time. Now, the same thing will apply when you get into that top elite section. You are chasing those marginal gains. You're talking about like the seconds of difference by upgrading something. But as a beginner and getting into the sport, suddenly when you say, oh, everyone can participate in triathlon, when you start actually looking at it, even just to enter, there are a lot of things you need. You almost have to have a wetsuit, you have to have a bike, and you have to have running equipment. That's like 3 times any other sport, because you have to have 3 different sets of things. From a training point of view, if you actually want to take it semi-seriously, you have to be able to train outdoors for swimming. So you have to be able to lake swim. That's often quite expensive. From a bike point of view, just facilitating that, everything that you need to be able to just get on the bike for the first time, is all expensive. So I don't like how focused it is on spending money, but you can also do it without spending the amounts of money that you see online and without the best bikes and without the best tri-suits.
I don't know. I think an argument could be made, right, that it's a necessary sacrifice. And ultimately, some people just won't be able to afford to be able to do that. And I think that's where it becomes wrong. But I guess you could argue that it's part of the commitment to be made. Like, you would be willing to put in the time, the money, the investment, physically and from a monetary point of view. And that's what adds to that sense of achievement and the massive piece of identity, as you said, around it.
I think that's fair to say. Like for Ironman, there are so many parts of what it costs that you just wouldn't even directly correlate. So you think about like the increase in your general nutrition. So that's just like normal meals. You can eat potentially double what you were eating without doing it. The other costs like gym costs, getting to places, the things that you opt for, convenience, the nutrition, like sports nutrition to get you through your sessions. There's so much of it that is it like peripheral costs, if you like,
but adds up quickly.
But quickly adds up.
Food's expensive now as well, man.
Oh god, yeah.
That chicken racks up quickly. Anyway, okay, so next one. I got the process written down because I feel like it's not just the race day or the train its own right. Like the whole thing, I feel like, as we said, there's a lot of variables, right? So what would you say was your biggest lesson from the whole process?
I think in terms of like a single lesson and like my massive takeaway, and it affirmed something that I was mentally toying with for a long time, is that this idea that if you follow the plan and you put in what you want to and you commit to something, the output will be in your favor. And I think before I toyed with this idea of like, how true actually is that? Like, how can I validate that? It's almost impossible. But the like big takeaway and the thing that affirmed everything that I thought I knew is that if you whatever you put in, you will get out. And I really do believe that to be true. There are loads of micro lessons that I would have learned in that, and loads of things about my training and the way that I operate. But I think the biggest thing is just that if you commit to something and you want to do it and you want to put the work in, like, you will get what you want. And I believe that to be true across every walk of life, but you just have to really commit to something.
Doing the do. I had a question there and I completely lost it. What was the hardest part though? Was it the bike?
What, in terms of the race or the whole?
Any of it.
I think if we take out, because I've spoken about how hard the bike was, probably the other part that I found hard and started to become increasingly hard was the sacrifice that I made to every other part of my life. And I knew that going into it. So I knew that I was going to, I remember sitting down with my coach and we were saying, your Saturdays and Sundays, you're going to finish your working week and all you will do is train, and you'll go back to work on Monday, people will ask what you've done, and all you will be able to say is I trained and ate and slept, and that's it. And you have to get really, really comfortable with that, and you have to get really comfortable with it really, really fast. By the end, I was starting to struggle with missing things. My brother would be playing football and I'd be like, I can't go because I've got a big run to do. I would miss your football because I'd be training. Started to just feel harder and harder to keep saying no to these things that I wanted to be at. As it's all part of the process, and I knew that going into it. So there was no surprise when that came. But what suddenly felt like kind of good, feeling like I can't do that because I'm choosing to do this, just started to feel like, God, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to look back on this period and say, was that really worth missing 3 months of the rest of life to just race a silly race? I do think it was the right thing. And I think I think you have to be comfortable with putting in that level of commitment and sacrifice. But it did start to get hard.
Yeah.
And like from a work point of view, I knew, and I started to get closer and closer to race, saying, I just need this to be finished because I have to be able to put some time into something else. There's other parts of my life that need me. And I guess there's a strength and power in the ability to be free enough in every sense of the word to lean into the places that are drawing you. And when you have a commitment like that, you can't. It's the same as anything. Like you could put this into like a financial situation, into having children, into where your work is. That if you have something constraining your ability to lean into the thing that is demanding your attention, feels good at that moment, is, you know, like drawing you to something, that can start to feel quite frustrating. So I was having this sense of like, I really want to lean into this project, this work, this thing that I'm doing, but I just don't have the extra time because I'm being bound by Ironman, the thing that I really wanted to do and I'd already committed to. So I'm never just going to be like, oh, whatever, I'll just sack it off. But that started to become really hard and started to make post Ironman life feel really exciting to be able to sit there and say, all of these things around me that I might want to lean into, I can. And I can reevaluate how I spend my time and where my focus is and where I put my mental load.
What kept you disciplined in those moments where you were sort of, okay, I want to go and feed X, or I don't know if I want to spend the whole weekend cycling, or whatever it had to be?
God, some of it's probably just stubbornness. Some of it is like this idea of the like sunk cost. I would have put so much into it by that point that just giving up would have felt worse than enduring the last few weeks of just getting it done. I would hate to think that I'd put that much in and then just sacked it off at the last minute. But also I guess that is when, you know, that was coming up to the time where I felt like I'd done everything I needed to do. When I'm saying like that last 4 or 5 weeks, you're almost in taper at that point because it's an extended taper for a race like that. So it was probably like the 3-4 weeks before where it was like at that critical point.
Yeah.
So it's like at that point, that is the bit that you need to get through to have that sense of pride and to say, I did the hard thing. When I think about the reason I wanted to do it, and that being that I wanted to do something that I didn't think I could do, wanted to commit to something bigger than I've ever committed to before, and I wanted to push myself to my absolute limit. To do that, I had to just get through that last little bit. But it was by the time I was getting to like the very end of that and taper that I was like, I've done what I wanted to achieve. Whether I race or not, I've done what I wanted to do.
Interesting. So what about now? You said how it's been sort of quite interesting from doing everything to doing enough. What's sort of been that process like of from just life is training and how training can be a part again?
Yeah, it's been hard. I won't try and say it in any other way. In the lead up to Ironman and then the month post Ironman, I'd started to see a bit of a shift in my menstrual cycle. And that was the driving reason for me taking time out after I did Ironman, because they're the early signs. Like as women, we have the benefit of having that like monthly health check where your cycle says, yeah, everything's fine. Like I've got enough energy, everything's going well. And here's your period to make sure you know that. And here's your ovulation. Men don't have that, unfortunately. But as women, we kind of have to listen to that. So
it's probably quite fortunate that we don't.
No, true. But when you think about like the silver lining and the benefit of that, particularly as an athlete, it's really important that you listen to that. So the month before, I'd seen a bit of a change, and then just after, I'd seen that change stay, and I was like, I need to listen to this. So something, don't know exactly what it is, but my body's not 100% happy about something. So I was like, I'm just gonna take time out, both mentally, so I can rebalance that, what I was just talking about, this idea that you can then lean into anything you want. I just needed to completely reset. I needed to make sure that my body was totally happy, because no race, no training is worth like physically making your body unhappy. So I just needed that time. And that kind of month turned into probably 2 months of just training when I wanted to. It was pretty unstructured. I was putting a lot of that extra time into work. There was a big project going on that was demanding a lot of my attention. And then I was like, okay, so what does it look like going forward? And there'd be moments in Ironman training where I was like, I really want to do that. So I ran Southampton Marathon earlier this year. And I was like, once this Ironman's done, I'm going all in on running a fast marathon. So came to post Ironman and I was like picking up that thought, thinking, I don't know if that's really what I want to do now. I don't know if I'm feeling that draw to do that. And again, one of the things that I was really excited for post Ironman is not having to feel the pressure of like, I must do this because I need to get to this, 3:30 marathon that I was maybe going for. So I just tried to like forget about everything and think, no, okay, so what do I want to do? And I'm also still navigating that now. So I'm working with a new coach, just focus on building a bit of strength. But I've lost a lot of speed. I've lost fitness. Taking time out was the right thing to do, but the rebuild is hard. I'm having to work in ways that I haven't before. I'm also managing, it's funny, you go from like easily allocating 15 hours a week to like suddenly struggling to make the times for like the most basic sessions. But that's something that I chose to invest a little bit more time in work because I had some things I wanted to do there. And it's all just part of navigating now, like what success looks like. So for me, it's just consistency right now. I had a plan to book another marathon. I haven't done it yet because actually I've got no draw to do that right now. So if I haven't got that feeling or draw to book anything, then I just shouldn't until I'm super clear on the fact that is what I want to do. I don't think anything good would come from me jumping into another race.
No. So what would you say you now are doing well and doing not so well now that sort of the balancing act required by, as you say, amateur athletes, now that sort of training has become less of the main thing, shall we say?
I think it will come back for sure. I think there's other times in my life. It's also worth saying, like, I did that Ironman then. I had a lot of conversations about it. I'm doing it now because I can foresee loads of other times where I just won't be able to make it that much of a priority. That's why I chose to do it when I did. Now, I guess it's just balancing how I can consistently train, that I do progress, but I don't have any crazy goals to do or be a particular speed or run a particular race or get to a particular distance. Manage, how that feeds into my like general well-being and stress management and how I can make sure I'm the best that I can be for every other aspect of my life. And I think it will come with time where I start to feel more inclined to put more into it. But it's just like rebalancing everything. Like training's dropped down, work's gone up. We're also like buying a house and like loads of other things are happening. There's like once some of those other things, so like work comes down a bit, the house has dropped, then there's like more scope for training to come back up again. So I think I just need to be patient with myself. I think I've been a little bit too patient at times where I've just been like, oh, I can't get that done right now. But yeah, just find a new flow.
And what is next? You said marathon is maybe not talking to you as much as you thought it might have done. Is there anything else that's sort of tickling your fancy?
I've kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit because now I've done the Ironman. I was never bothered about being fast. So any race that I've done, I've like naturally got faster, but it's never been because I wanted to be fast. It's because I just wanted to do the thing. I wanted to do the distance or I wanted to do the race. Now I've done Ironman, like the novelty or the idea of doing anything else. Like I've always talked about doing an ultra, and it's like, I've done an Ironman. Like I know that I could do an ultra. I'm not saying an ultra is not hard. It's a different type of hard. But where I was looking before at doing like a 50k ultra, I know that I probably, if I can do an Ironman, I can probably run an ultra. It's just a different kind of training, and I know that I can do that sort of training. Talking about the fast marathon, it's been like on my radar for a while. It's like, what could I produce if I really, really focused on running a fast marathon? Right now, I just don't have any draw or desire to run a fast marathon and start that kind of training. But that's not to say that won't come back.
Yeah.
I'm almost certain that it will. It's just not there right now. So for now, it's like staying consistent. It's making sure that I'm like managing my work-life balance well, which I like inherently struggle with. Yeah, and just finding some joy in training again, and like being able to just be comfortable with just training because I like it.
It's important.
Yeah, it's so important.
Literally everyone I've spoke to so far for this series, that they've all said that to some effect, to some extent.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I don't feel like it's spoken about enough. I think it applies when so many people are trying to get into training.
But this is a massive challenge with social media, because we have it rammed down our throats that you have to do these massive events and you have to go and do all these things, and it's all about achievements and races. Yeah. Like, there is nothing wrong with just training because you want to, training to get better, training to be the best version of yourself, even if you never apply that into a racing.
Yeah, it can be any sport, right? And it's that age-old thing of like, all right, you need to go to the gym if you want to start looking after yourself. No. Go walking, play tennis, golf, like anything. I wouldn't say golf is a sport, but that's just my own personal view. But it can be anything you want. Movement's movement, right?
Maybe that makes me feel less like an amateur athlete. At a time, and definitely in Series 1, I felt really closely linked to the identity of an amateur athlete. Now I don't know how much that feels true, because I'm training just because I want to be healthy and I want to be the best version of me, but I'm definitely not giving it the focus that I have at previous points in my life.
Well, that feeds very nicely into the first of the quickfire questions. So you've got to answer these as quickly as you possibly can. Jack didn't, so take your time. What does it mean to be an amateur athlete to you?
So do you mean that in terms of how I am right now, or as a concept?
Expand on both.
So right now, I think is just that I identify less with this idea of being an amateur athlete and just being someone who's trying to do their best. At a point in time, being an amateur athlete for me was really about this place where you're training to perform, you're managing a career and life and relationships and trying to develop and just do everything to the best that you can, but ultimately just being so short on resource and time. Now it's like, it's almost one and the same. Like, now I've said it out loud, I'm still in that, but it's just the balance is less. The balance is less about training and more about life.
Favorite quote at the moment?
God, I have so many that ring around, but a lot of my conversations at the moment, I'm talking a lot about this idea that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. We said about it this morning. And I just think when you get into this like hole or space of like, I'm just trying to do everything as much as I can, it's like you can do anything you want. Like, I really, really believe that. And this is how I've ended up doing a bloody Ironman, because I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. Like, you can do anything, but you just can't do everything, at least not at the same time.
Best lessons from your years of training?
Mine are probably mostly around listening to your body and like blocking out the noise from everything else. So like, I've really learned about myself, the importance of, and again, just culturally, we're bombarded by this on social media and everything else, that like, actually just listen to your body. What do you respond to? How do you like training? When does it feel like too much and when does it not? And ignoring all of the noise around, you should do this, you should train like this, here's my morning routine, like eat like this. It's like, just ignore it all and focus on you.
Greatest achievement so far?
In life or training?
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really hard to put down to a single thing. It's almost impossible. Like, the Ironman's a massive achievement, but I wouldn't say Ironman is my greatest achievement. I'd say being like, and this probably sums up the way that I view like being in this space at this moment, having done an Ironman, being in a relationship, moving house with a career that I once dreamed of. Like, that's my biggest achievement. But that isn't a single thing. It's just like, it's along the way I managed to do or make the decisions that meant that I've got to a place where I love my life. It's really fulfilling. It's stressful, don't get me wrong, but like on the whole, I love my life, and that's probably the only thing that I could ever want.
I think that's a very powerful mindset. Biggest goal on the horizon? I know you don't necessarily have anything particular working towards right now, but you mentioned sort of ultras and whatnot. Is anything in particular there?
I think it'd be unfair for me to try and say that I had a single like sporting goal. To be totally honest, my goal at the moment is to just be consistent with training. And I think that needs to come before anything else, and just figure out, like what I've been saying, this new balance, how my life works with training, work, everything else. But I don't know, in a few months I'll be like, oh, I want to go to Scotland and run like some crazy ultra.
Stay tuned then. What do you fall short in balancing that you'd like to get better at?
God, everything. I struggle. Part of my personality is I get super obsessed about something. So I got super obsessed about Ironman. So I did it, and like everything else just got pushed to the side. And I often go in these like periods of time where I'll obsess over something so deeply, and then I really struggle to balance everything else in. I put it in my check-in just recently. So I've had a lot going on at work, and I've got really super obsessed about that. So everything else goes to the side at other points, and it's like on a micro level, it will be like I'm super obsessed about finishing this one task, and like if you ask me anything else, I just can't even find an answer. You're smiling because you know how true it is. So yeah, that just general balance of like finding an equal amount of everything, I find quite hard. But I suppose on a more practical level, I want to better balance like my recovery, getting steps in, reading, all of this that I like always try and battle to make sure it has good time in my life. But it's often the first things to start slipping.
Okay. And then lastly is the question left for you by Jack.
Did he know it was for me?
He didn't actually know.
Okay.
If I was a genie and could offer you any one attribute from someone in your sport, who is it and what would it be?
I can't say who because I don't know who.
Okay.
No, I can't say because it's a big secret. But I think you see in athletes, and I guess I say I can't say who because it's really hard to tell what the genuine emotion is of a lot of the athletes we see publicly.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of athletes and you see like so many success stories and the things that they say, and then like 3 years later, their life's on the ground and they're in a massive hole because everything's not worked out. So I don't know enough about a person to be able to say they definitely have that attribute. But I guess the thing that I will always aspire to, whether it's triathlon, running, or anything else I end up doing, is the passion that you see in so many athletes, like years to come, especially when you look into like the older generations of athletes. If I can continue being passionate enough about whatever it is, that it keeps me finding the balance, keeps me enjoying it, becomes just as much of a hobby and that passion as it is a chore to be healthy and fit. I just think that's so powerful. If you've got the passion for something, that you can do anything.
Yeah. There you go. And then finally, what is a question you would like to leave for the next person?
I talk a lot about this idea that everything happens for a reason. So if we take that concept, what is the thing that happened to you that you now reflect on as a reason you got to wherever you are now?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to leave before we finish up?
Go and do an Ironman. You'll love it.
Thank you very much.